Hey, this is Rob with All In Together. I'm going to talk to you about Silver Age. I've been really enjoying the format so far. I've kind of stepped away from CC. I felt a little burnt out lately, and Guardian's not in a great spot. Super Slam was a bit of a
miss.
I think overall, I don't think if you talk to anybody, they'll say, Super Age really crushed it for Guardians. I think there's interesting ideas and concepts for Guardian. But I think as a whole, and for CC, I think there's just too many decks that are too much of a problem for Guardian really to have much play. This is around the time they announced Silver Age, and that it would be supported as a competitive format. I really dove headfirst in, and I've had so much fun playing Silver Age. I think it's an incredible format. I love playing Commoner. I think this really strikes a healthy balance, and it's a great way to get people into the game. So let's talk about the game, a little bit of the format, and whether or not you should consider playing Guardian. So overall, we'll be talking about what Silver Age is, why they chose to go with Silver Age over something like Blitz or Commoner, why, if you're a CC player, or even if you don't play Flesh and Blood, why should you care about a format like Silver Age? What does the meta look like? And we'll talk a little bit about some of these heroes, because not everybody knows what all these heroes do because they've been in or out of the meta, or they've even LL'd and they've come back. On the second half of the video, we'll dive into Guardian. We'll talk about why you should play Guardian, the impact of Mastery Pack, and maybe argue that that set was better than we thought it was, the staples Guardian should consider, and kind of the reasons to play Guardian, which Guardian can you play, and why should you play those Guardian, and we'll talk about the decks that I've been playing and the decks that I found really interesting. So what is Silver Age? I think Silver Age is the most fun you get for $20. I think this is an incredible format. What LSS has done to support this is phenomenal. This is just coming off the back of the keynote at Worlds, where they announced Compendium of Rathe, and everything makes a lot more sense. How all these decks are basically competitive, out-of-the-box $20 decks that you can buy your LGS, and they come with a pack of Compendium Rathe, which can help support and upgrade your Silver Age deck. It is a format that is commons and rares only. These decks are designed to be out-of-the-box. You buy it, boom, you can play on a calling the next 5 minutes. It's a 20-life format with 40 cards in the deck, 55 cards overall in your inventory, and it has a really interesting voting-based rotation. So now we can no longer complain about bad formats. It's our fault for voting poorly, which I think is kind of funny. I'm curious to see how it'll play out, and I expect things will get changed in the next 6 months or so, but I am really excited to see how things go. This format looks like a ton of fun. It looks like there's a lot of really cool decks, but it's incredible that we have an option like Silver Age to just get people into the door. A problem I know we have at my store is we'll get a huge turnout for pre-release, and if an army rolls around, we get 6 people. It breaks my heart to go from 20 plus people at a pre-release and then 6 people in Armory. And I understand they're different events. This game has great mass appeal and the game's really fun. It's just when the game's $1,000, it's a hard sell. But that's, where we come in here. This is $20 decks. Instead of going seeing a movie for the night, you can go buy a deck and go play games with your friends. And these decks are competitive right out of the box. So why would they pick this up over something like Blitz? I think the big thing is that Fab should last a couple turns. I think the best part of Fab is making your decisions and having your decisions come back and reward you. There's been such this amazing power creep in Blitz. I remember when I started playing Blitz, I had a lot of fun with it. It was really cool. But one thing I was noticing is that heroes with fridges versus heroes that didn't have fridges were such a massive gap. Like I was playing Bravo where I had got like 15 points in armor, and then I played against the Benji who had like maybe 2 points of armor they could use realistically, and it's like, okay, you have 19 health and I have 34. It just felt like such a disparity in power, and I think ultimately we saw that really come to a head with MST, and we saw what happened with Zen, where he LL'd in the first 2 weeks of skirmish, and they brought him back. I think that was the point where they're like, yeah, Blitz is done, we're gonna kill it, and we'll bring Zen back, let people have fun with Zen, and then we'll work on a format that uses these young heroes in a way that I think people will be excited for. So I think maybe they were trying to talk about Silver Age sooner, but it's been kind of in development for a while, and they felt like, all right, we got it in a really good spot, we're ready to send it. But when games are so short, you no longer feel like it's Flesh and Blood, you feel like you're really just kind of relying off the top of your deck, and it doesn't feel like you're playing a skill expressive game, it just feels like you're kind of gambling at a certain point. And the other problem with Blitz is the decks are expensive. I remember when I started, I was like, I can get into Blitz, but like there's no one playing Blitz locally, and my Blitz decks is like $650, and my CC deck's $1,000, so it's $350 more to play with everybody else, and like no one's playing Blitz, so it just felt better to play CC. Maybe there's communities that do Blitz, but I think for more people, having a living Silver Age community will do way more than a living Blitz community would. So we talked about kind of the expensive end, but why not, let's go even cheaper with Commoner. I think rares add a lot of excitement to the format. I've played a lot of Commoner events. I was at El Harden in Portland last year, which was a really cool event. It was a ton of fun to play in. But I think heroes lose a lot of identity without their rares, and it can devolve into a bit of a one-deck format. I know Portland wasn't a one-deck format, but shortly after with Enigma and the, what's it called, the Reality Refractor deck, that was a really gross deck. And then I think after they banned Reality Refractor, it's just kind of become an IRA deck, or an IRA format, and people are just playing IRA mirrors and not having fun. I know a lot of my friends have done the Gold Foil Commodore events, have done pretty well, and they just said this is, you know, it's an okay format, but it's just, games are very samey, there's such a limited card pool, and you're only playing these couple strategies. There's not like you can't really attack the game in all these different ways that Flesh and Blood, I think, does really well. And it makes Flesh and Blood such a fun and unique game. So I think Silver Age will kind of build out that card pool, especially with a site like Compendium of Rathe, where we'll see a lot of really interesting decks come out and a lot of cool strategies. I think the most exciting part about Fab is our organized play system. It takes you basically from your LGS to the World Tour. I remember when I started, I would never dream I would play on the Pro Tour. I played some armories, had a lot of fun, and then learned about these pro quests that would kind of come every couple of months, and I ended up winning one in my first season. But it's really such an easy way to go from just playing at armories casually and having fun with the game to just getting sucked into competing. And we've done that with Classic Constructed, we've done that with Limited, but now they're really pushing Silver Age. So that way you can play Silver Age at your armory, and you can get right into competitive play. We have a Silver Age Pro Quest coming a little bit after Compendium releases, so it gives us kind of this new competitive format we can kind of experiment with. It keeps the game less, you know, bland. Basically, this is going to replace Blitz for skirmishes, for Pro Quests, for any kind of Tier 3 events. They've chopped off Battle Hardens. We've replaced them with Shutdowns, which is really cool. I think Shutdowns are going to be a huge success. We'll talk more about that in a second. But this is also a way to add like another, instead of LL at Worlds or instead of Draft at a Pro Tour, we can add in Silver Age as another kind of way to spice things up, or we could even do like a try format like we've done in the past. So what is the showdown? Battle Hardens are gone. I know a lot of people have some mixed feelings about Battle Hardens. I know my friend group and I really don't like them. They feel very low EV. They don't feel like they're worth playing in a lot of times. It's fun to play, but it's like, if I gotta travel and I gotta get a hotel, it's like, there's no way I'm making anything back. There's no way, it's a hassle. I think we had a friend of mine who, I think got like 9th out of Battle Harden a couple of weeks ago, and just, and that sucks. That really sucks to just get like absolutely nothing for getting so close. They're taking a huge step in the right direction for our competitive play, with kind of replacing Battle Hardens with showdowns and just adding so many more callings instead of these standalone events that weren't run always super well. So we have callings, and then we'll have a Silver Age showdown attached to the side. It basically will be $5,000 in prize pool. Top 4 get gold foils. They'll get the Blossoming Spring and various blade backender pieces, which is really cool, and it's a great way to incentivize people to practice and play Silver Age. So let's talk about, I've talked a little bit about Compendium Rathe, but I think this is a set that we've needed for a little while now. This is our first master set, basically. It's almost 350 cards. I think it's basically 100 cards more than any other set we've seen. There's going to be 80 pieces of equipment at least, with I think about 50 or 60 of them are going to be Sage legal, which is awesome. There's support for every class and talent, which is direly needed, I think. I think a lot of classes, I feel like they've gotten by the wayside. They've just gotten left in the dust. Even when they get support, they just don't really work, because there's certain of the cards you don't want to have in Limited, and then when you print them in a Limited set, it gets really gross. So they try to avoid that, but then they just don't get the help they need for CC. I remember I had a conversation with folks online about like, hey, I don't think these expansion slots for the most part work. They're cool, like bits and pieces here and there. Like I think Verdance is probably the best example of like actually it working. But like she just got spoon-fed so much, and maybe she was a better deck than we thought coming out of Rosetta. But for the most part, like Riptide sucks. Bolton still sucks. Vincent still struggles, and it's just like a lot of these heroes have gotten kind of very tailored targeted support, and it just doesn't work in these one cards. You kind of need to build out like a set of commons, a set of rares, you know, just give them a good base to work off of, and you can't really do that with the expansion slot. So I think this is something we've needed for a couple of years now, and I think this is going to be a slam dunk. We've already seen some of these cards that look pretty impressive. As well, we're getting some incredible reprints. We're getting things like Shelter back, we're getting E-Strike back, we're getting Balance back, we're getting Tunic back. It's just like so many cards have gotten so expensive and keep the game so prohibitively hard for people to get into, make it a lot easier. And I hope we also see a couple other big reprints, but I know the Fables are coming back, so that's fucking awesome. Super stoked. I think that'll be a huge success, and I cannot wait to get my hands on this set. So now that we've talked about kind of things around Silver Age, let's get into the kind of the meat and potatoes here, is that what should I expect? I took a breakdown from February of the most played decks right now in Silver Age. We see kind of the top 4 decks are going to be Ira, Ryer, Azalea, and Bravo, kind of just in play order, and they all have above a 50% win rate. These are all some very powerful decks, but I think there's a lot more to explore with this format. I think by the time it rolls around to your local Pro Quest, we'll get Compendium of Rathe, and I think the balance of power will shift a fair bit, but I think there's a lot to learn, and I think as people start to compete, we're going to find some pretty cool decks. I think even over the last couple of weeks, we've started to see the meta evolve, and we've seen certain decks kind of rise to prominence and learn to counter others. I just can't say enough to say how stoked I am, but let's kind of dig into some of these heroes and talk about why you would want to play them. Ira is what I would call the queen of value. She's an incredible deck where her hero power just says her second attack each turn gets +1, which is, I think, kind of a great baseline if you're always trying to get at least a value or so out of your hero power every turn. So she has really flexible deck building. There's a lot of different ways to abuse her hero power, whether you're trying to go really wide, whether you're trying to send these really disruptive attacks that are coming in for breakpoints, or whether you're just trying to get value however you can. She just has incredible numbers. The Kodachis make her really hard to block. It's hard to block 1s and 2s, so there's not a really good way to kind of block her out, so she's always kind of forcing you down pretty quickly, and she can send in these disruptive on-hits like Humble and cut down to size with breakpoints that make it really hard for people to kind of block them with armor. Something that she can struggle with because she plays Kodachis, her blues kind of suck. She has to play a lot of zero-cost blues, which don't really convert well for value, so if you find yourself where she's an all-blue hand, it really can convert poorly, and then if she kind of finds herself in an unfair strategy, so things like Wizard can especially be tricky for her, or if you have like a very setup oriented build that requires her to convert constantly, she can struggle. She struggled in the Runeblade, she struggled into some very fatigue heavy strategies prior, so I think there are holes in her strategy, but I think she's probably our best deck in the game right now. Azalea is if you are looking to rush down your opponent with damage that they can't block, I think Azalea is incredible. She is the best anti-aggro deck right now. She has a ton of damage, incredibly impactful on hits, and dominant makes it really hard to interact with her. She does kind of fold to disruption and armor, so big armor classes like Guardian, and they have, you know, some powerful on hits that come back into her are really hard for her to deal with. She's susceptible to being fatigued out if you're able to survive the dominate, so if you have a lot of reactions and can cover her, you'll be safe. But she can run into kind of Runeblade hands where she draws all arrows, no buffs, or all buffs and no arrows, and she can really brick hard. But a lot of her equipment really helps her get around that. And I think with that, we're going to talk about our first spoiler from Compendium of Rathe. We got the Bolton Boots. So these are really good. These are kind of like snaps for her. They can block 1. Basically, you get Bolton Shot. You can turn any arrow into Bolton Shot as long as you pay a resource by snapping these. I think it's really good for her to be able to convert her hands that have a couple more arrows in them. I think you may change your deck build a little bit. You may be playing more of the bullseye bracers rather than bracers of belief with these, so you can kind of load in more and kind of keep going. But I think these are pretty impressive. They block a little bit and they're still able to kind of keep your turns going. You can get through some bricky hands. This is the kind of equipment I really want to see from this set. I think this is stuff that's like not quite CC playable, but it's like, this is perfectly respectable. And it gives her a way to kind of block out a little bit more if she needs to. I think right now they're running Blade back in her, and that's just a little boring. Briar is kind of our go wide aggressive value deck. She can be played in a lot of different ways, but typically she's kind of this 4-4-4-4 deck where she sends powerful on hits on all these attacks, generating embodiments or sending cards like Snatch that make your opponent kind of have to think about how to block. And then she has great reactions like Lightning Press that can really punish people for blocking incorrectly. She has a huge card pool with having Earth, Lightning, and Runeblade, so she can be built in kind of more fatigue or slow ways, or just very aggressively. Having split damage makes it really hard to block her, but again, she's susceptible to these Runeblade hands, and as of right now, she has some pretty mediocre equipment, but I think that's going to change with the next sets. So we have Bravo, Flutter, and Showman, our guardian of the format. He's got big attacks, they do great deck damage. He's actually able to convert his hands relatively well thanks to his hero power. He gets a bit of flexibility. He's got really good armor thanks to Mastery Pack Guardian, and also the Tolarian Community College set is pretty okay. There's some holes in it, but I think between those, he's got some really good armor. Dominate makes it really hard to cover up his crush effects, so he's actually able to land them, unlike he is in CC, although he can struggle into decks that kind of demand him to go multiple wide each turn. And then if your opponent has a well-timed D-React, when they're really relying on crush effects, you can get blown out pretty hard. But I think he's a great deck, and I think Guardian's in a pretty good spot. Finally, our crowd favorite is back, Icelander. I think is a hero that I've always loved playing into. She's a hero that really rewards knowledge. If you're able to understand how your opponent plays, you can absolutely just shut down a turn with a well-timed Frostbite. By playing ice spells in your opponent's turn, you can stop them in their tracks and kind of take advantage of their tight resource curve. The more you know your opponent's deck and the more you know their play patterns, the better she gets. She really rewards a high skill ceiling. I think this is one of the most skill-intensive decks we've seen historically in Flesh and Blood. Currently, she kind of relies on some pretty poor numbers. She has to play a lot of generics to kind of do what she wants to, but I think Pen should kind of flesh out her toolkit a little bit more, and I expect her to be one of the better decks in the format. Oldhim is an old favorite of mine. Not everybody loves this deck. Being a dual element guardian, he gets access to a huge card pool, Earth and Ice. Rosetta had a ton of great cards for him. I expect Pen to give some really powerful ice effects to him as well. He's very fatigue focused. If that's something that you don't love, maybe there's more ways to be disruptive with upcoming card pool, but historically, when you play Oldhim, you're looking to outlast your opponent. You have a huge card pool. I think he has arguably the largest card pool in the game for this format. You're all about kind of outlasting and blocking, and then when your opponent gets you space, you can disrupt them. Can absolutely be taken advantage of by your opponent being on kind of more board state style heroes. So even if your opponent has a somewhat unfavored matchup, if they knew how to kind of set up a large turn that can kind of get over Oldhim's defenses, he can struggle. But I think this is a pretty good deck to be playing, especially in something like Ira, where he's one of the few decks that can fatigue her. Dromai is another. I love doing this because we go through like all these all-time favorite decks of Flesh and Blood. I really like playing it at Dromai. She's, I think, in my mind, one of the better designed illusionists. I know that's up for debate, but she's a really red line deck, which kind of can be good for her, but also come back to bite her. She has these very high value cards, but when decks ask for a lot of resources, whether that's arcane damage or whether that's frostbites, she can struggle. A lot of people love the class fantasy of building up this army of dragons, so I think she's a really huge flavor win. She's I think, an absolute crowd favorite, but she does have a bit of a challenging mechanic with ash management and making sure you have enough ashes for all the dragons you plan to play out. But once you master that, you're really able to snowball games out of control, and you're really able to kind of build these huge board states and roll over a lot of decks that can struggle into you. Decks like Ira can really abuse Dromai, going super wide and being able to cut her dragons down, and also keep their hands small as well. She's vulnerable to Phantasm if you don't have the right tools for it, so decks like Guardian can be tricky for her. Chain is maybe the best Flesh and Blood deck ever created. This is a deck that really has insane turn-to-turn value. If you're coming from Magic, he really reminds me of like a Suicide Black deck, where you're trying to burn yourself out and trying to do as much damage to yourself as possible for these insanely powerful effects. He's always kind of turning his cards into resources by managing them off the top of the deck, and then playing them with a Blood Debt. He has very evasive damage by doing both arcane and physical. He can take a few turns to get going with this by setting up his Soul Shackles, so if you're too fast, you can kind of burn Chain out and kill him quickly. Or if you are not practiced into fatigue, you can struggle. But I think as you get more and more practice, and as the format develops more, it develops really good game plans into these fatigue decks, and he's able to outlast them. He is also able to build in a couple different ways, whether that's Runegate or it's kind of normal Chain. So I think there's a couple different ways you can play him, which can catch people off guard as well. Then the last of the decks I'm going to talk about right now is KO. I think KO is an incredibly powerful deck. I think most people know him. He's great in heavy hitters, and he's pretty good right now. If you like to gamble a little bit, I think he's your guy. There's a bit of variance in him, but he can have some incredibly powerful turns. He's got pretty good armor right now with Barkbone, with Beaten Trackers, and he's got a hat with Temper 2, which is incredible. He can go super wide, like easily without having Blood Rush. He can go like Wild Ride into Claw into Bear Fangs, and that's like 18 value, which is a great place to be in a format like this. So he's just really able to kind of put out pressure every turn, and if he has the space, he's just going to keep ramming you. He is susceptible to D-reacts with cards like Pulping, so you can kind of stuff him and punish him, but not every hero is going to play those into him. But if you're able to get him low, and you're able to kind of keep him on the back foot, he has really bad small hands, especially with a lot of no blocks. So you can kind of put him in weird spots. A lot of the pearls make him vulnerable, but I think he's going to be a pretty good deck going forward. So I really appreciate everyone watching so far. I should say, leave a comment about what hero you're most excited for in Silver Age, and maybe tell me a little about what you're looking forward to in Compendium of Rathe. Your engagement means a lot, so if you guys are able to like, comment, and subscribe, that really helps our channel grow. I think we've done incredible this first couple months of having the channel out, and I would love to push 1,000 subscribers. We're not as far as I think, so I'm really excited, but thank you for watching. And then I think we're going to talk a little bit about Guardian. So should you play Guardian in Silver Age?
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Guardian rocks. Guardian's so much fun in this format. There's like so many different flavors of Guardians you can play. There's different builds for each Guardian. This rocks. Mastery Pack has given us some really cool tools. I think if you're sitting down and love Guardian, I think this is a good format for you. I know a lot of us felt this set kind of missed the mark on CC, and I remember looking at these cards and going, man, these cards are like kind of good, but they just like don't line up in CC quite. You don't play enough limited or like, you know, crack shuffle play for them to just kind of design these cards. Like they could have just easily put boring cards in there, but I was like, they're cooking something, because I like want to play with these like Richter scale, like Gauntlet Boulder Hold. These 2 3-for-7s are really good. Renounced Grandeur, I think, is a very good CC card whenever it's relevant. Like if Fang is the best deck in the format, this is a great card. And like Gauntlet is perfectly reasonable. It blocks 1 and then you're able to convert another card. Its offensive value is great. Fault Line is really sick. We're kind of getting some updated tools for these WTR crush cards that feel like way more relevant, way more reliable than what we've had before. One of the big question marks about the format is Pummel the best card in the format. I think as we played more and more, I think we've seen it's not quite the best card in the format. Like you can play around it, and I think it's a bit of a scrub killer. And like, sure, sometimes you get owned by Pummel and it sucks, but like they've gotten rid of the cards that make Pummel, I think, broken. So by getting rid of Old Knocker, you're not able to reduce a basically generate a resource at instant speed anymore. You have to kind of go into an attack saying, I have 2 floating or have an extra card in hand. You know, you can smell a Pummel pretty easily now. It is reaction speed disruption. It's able to force through powerful on hits. It's incredibly costly. It's telegraphed, and your opponent has to keep a big hand on top of it being a very clunky card. So if you're kind of at low life and you're scrappy, and your opponent draws like 2 Pummels, they're kind of fucked. Super awkward to play. So, and it blocks 2. So if it blocked 3, I mean, I think that's a real concern, but this card is incredibly awkward at low life. And there are a ton of good counters, I think, for it. Springboard Somersault is a card I would consider playing in most decks. Reinforce the Line is very reasonable in a lot of these aggro decks. Oasis Respite has seen a lot of play, and I haven't seen this much Unmovable in years. There's just so many good counters to these big attacks that you're able to defend yourself and able to kind of convert your hand defensively. Unmovable is like one of the Guardian counters historically, and I think it's going to be really good here. So why would you play Guardian? We talked a little bit about it, but let's kind of go into exactly what makes Guardian so unique and so powerful in this format. The big thing is we've lost Sink Below, we've lost Fate Racine, we lost Shelter. So I think we are the deck that has the most 4 blocks in the game. We have great 4 blocks from Mastery Pack Guardian. We have Crash and Bash, which is block 4 and make a resource, and a Clash of Heads, and etc. These are all the yellow clashes, which you can have up to 10 in a deck. Basically, there's just a 4 block with the yellow, which is incredible. These let you play, you know, 2 card hands off a Sledge, so you can kind of block 8 and throw a Sledge back. And so it's got 14 card value, which is awesome. I think these yellow ones may get the axe, but we'll see. Then you have heavy ones like Test of Strength or Test of Might, where you're generating value drawing cards or just generating, you know, a Might. Even if you lose like a Test of Might onto a hero, if you're able to prevent a good on hit with a Test of Might, it's usually worth just the block anyway. But these are all very respectable block cards that no one else gets access to, and gives us a really good tool against these kind of 4/4/4 decks. We have Great Blues. That's a huge plus in this format. So these, I'm seeing a lot of these go to second cycle or go super long or get fatiguey. We're able to kind of beat out these other decks because we have such good blues. We have evasive blues. We have blues that kind of do a ton of deck damage. And even if we brick on all blues, you know, sending 8 and arsenaling a card is, you know, that's hardly the worst thing you could do in the world. We have great disruptive attacks. We finally got Red Boulder Drop. It's a card I think a lot of us have wanted for years at this point, and it's basically requires a card plus something from them. So it really stops these aggressive decks or these decks that are trying to, you know, send 5 cards. But if you're able to give this thing Dominate or force it through with a Pummel, this can be backbreaking and just win games on its own. And then Disable is kind of our own CNC that a lot of other decks don't have access to. I think a lot of decks feel very safe arsenaling cards right now because there's no CNC in the format, and we're able to punish these decks that want to, you know, set up this arsenal of a key card, and we're able to say, no, I'd like to disrupt that. We have, I think, finally something that we've missed for a long time, especially since heavy hitters, is we have the best fridge. No one comes close. We have Steel Braid Buckler, just as a temper 3 offhand. I think there's plenty of matchups where you would love to play a Little Hammer and just block 3 more. We have Civic Steps, which are kind of a laughingstock in CC, but I think they're one of the best cards you can play in Silver Age. Just boots that block 3, and as long as you understand what your opponent's turns look like, you can force them into either arsenaling a card early to give yourself some space, or, you know, wasting the Quicken. One thing I've actually had a lot of fun to do is blocking with Civic Steps to pump up my Renounced Grandeur, because now they have an aura. It's coming in for 8 instead of 7. Can be pretty relevant at times. Not only do we have good armor, we have a great weapon. I think this is something that Guardian's been strong with forever. Titan's Fist is actually a really good, you know, I think it's a phenomenal weapon of just, you know, block 9, send 4. Hard to do worse than 13 on a Guardian each turn, which is a great place to be in Silver Age. If you're looking to grind people out, whether it's with fatigue or just kind of put back pressure, and like a Guardian Mirror or Sledge is hard to argue with. 6 damage with no cards out of deck. If you're ever able to steal a Quicken token, you can swing twice in a turn for 3 cards, which is incredible. I think Sledge is one of the best weapons in the format, maybe the best weapon. So we've talked about all these powerful Guardian cards and all these great things they do. I went through it and I'm going to talk about kind of which Guardian you should play. This is a rough tier list. A lot of these ones, especially as you get lower, I think are a bit more flexible and are underexplored. Format's pretty new, but I think the top couple are better than the others. But I think there's one here that may spike up. We'll see. So we'll start with the hero I talked about earlier, Bravo Flattering Showman. I think this hero is incredible. This is everything I wish Bravo was in CC. He's able to convert hands of different value. So, you know, if you have an extra blue, you're able to turn this into +2 damage. You know, when you go for this dominate, you're not just wasting value. You're just saying, oh, okay, here's 2 more, and it's evasive. He's got a great floor and a really high ceiling where, you know, you can just be putting out consistent damage every turn by arshaling, you know, big attacks. Like, if you played him in Blitz, he's incredible with Crippling Crush, and Crippling Crush in for 13 dominate is backbreaking. Sending Star Truck in for 12 dominate is disgusting. And you're actually able to get, you know, Boulder Drop is now coming in for 9 dominate, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually out of armor, so they have to block with a card. They lose a card, they take 6 damage, and you're just really ahead on these races. You're turning Debilitate into a 10 power. On Crush, you get -2. So it's really like a 3-card 12, which is really good. That's hard to block. I think this is a phenomenal hero, and I think this is probably, if you want to start with Guardian, I think this is the best place to start. It's hard to talk about kind of strong heroes without bringing up Oldhim. Oldhim is historically one of the strongest Flesh and Blood decks we've ever seen. If you've played Fatigue, I think this is one of the most fun Fatigue heroes to play. He's incredible. Just having reliable, consistent ways to just prevent damage without spending cards out of your deck is so powerful. With Earth React, you can cover 2 damage each turn, so you can block things like Kadachi out really well, especially when it's like a flexible block, so you can go block 2 on this. You can like activate Earth React, block with a Finals Fighting Spirit to cover 2, gain a life, and then like the first Kadachi's covered, and you have this 1 floating prevention, and then go send a 5 attack, you block with a 4 block. And you're just like, then you swing Hammer back, and you're just like grinding them out of cards by keeping all your cards in deck. He's so cool, he's so consistent, but he is soft to some of these illusionists, especially when he doesn't run a lot of poppers. He runs some more elemental cards. Dromai can run him over, but I think Prism and Enigma are just impossible for him. But we'll see how these things kind of build out with Pen. But I think this is one of the Guardians you'd have to consider. With that, let's talk a little bit about some Pen spoilers. We got some really gross ones. So we don't have great D-Reacts in the format, but these Elemental Sheaths are really interesting to me. They're 1 for 5s, which is just kind of an awkward number, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then if you pitch the corresponding element to each react, you get a bonus effects. I think Ice is head and shoulders the strongest. Being able to just lock your opponent out and just say, oh, okay, you know, now you have to pitch, and they just can't pitch for the next attack. It just really puts them in awkward spots. I think it's really good at decks like KO or like Aurora or Briar. So I think that's really cool. 5 is an awkward number, but I think these are interesting, and I'm curious what more we'll get. I think the embodiment's also really good, and there's a world where you're able to get embodiment of Lightning and Guardian, which is kind of funny. But why I think these are really interesting is if you have 2 floating, you can then take our new card here, Colors of Aria, activate Oldhim, pitch this, and you're able to get both a Earth and Ice react by just pitching that and using the 2 floating, which is a huge value. That's just like insane. This is an on-rate attack. It's a 3 for 7. It's a popper. You can't fuse with it, but you can decompose it for things like Cadaverous, Tilling, Summersfall. I think this card is a house. This will see a lot of Silver Age play, I think, especially if we're getting more elemental support. This looks like a great place to be for Elemental. I think this is really good for Oldhim. This will probably see play in Terra too. It's just an Earth 3 block a lot of times, which is a great place to be. Terra is our 3rd Guardian here. Shout out to Flesh and Blood. I know they've been playing him lots. I know Aurora and Tegan have both been working very hard on this deck. He's got incredible value from his hero power. Basically, being able to generate might on both your turn and their turn is really cool. You can use some really cool pitch outlets like the Ironhide cards. You can use Oasis really well, but I do think he's one of the heroes that can struggle into Ira, who just kind of Kadachis him out. But if you're able to play this 4-block Sludge build, he can really run over a lot of decks that aren't prepared to beat him. Like Briar especially is a really, really tough deck to play into Terra. Valda Brightaxe is, I think, a really interesting hero right now. She actually has the largest health pool. She's the only one above 20 in the format. I think her hero power is really interesting, especially as I think quite a few heroes in this format draw cards. You have heroes like KO, Azalea, a lot of the Rune Blades like to sneak card draw in however they can, so you're able to punish them by just getting surges and then building up to big dominant attacks. She has a really good fridge, I think. She plays the usual kind of Civic Steps, Pepper Shield. She's actually able to use Civic Peak, I think, as a power card rather than kind of a detriment, where as long as if you block correctly, you're able to just use it as an upside where it generates resources for you instead of giving your opponents gas. Sometimes you do take a risk, but if you're able to set up like a 16 dominate and just end the game with it, who cares if you have an arsenal? She has incredible just big attacks with the old one cards, which I think are basically just cheaper red macho for her, which is really cool. She uses the Mastery Pack Guardian, which is basically just a set tailor-made for her, and so I think she has a lot of really interesting support, and I think she's an underexplored deck in the format, especially since we just got this pen spoiler of Magmatic Carapace. I think maybe there's kind of a new archetype for Guardian here with auras. I know we've always wanted to support and build out these aura Guardians. I think this card is a house. This card is insane. It's a guard ball 2 chest, which already, it can have no text, and that would be like a good place to be. But for the fact that you're able to use a floating resource and tap it to generate a seismic surge, I think that lines up really well if you have the old one cards where if you heave it with 2 floating, you generate 2 surges. But with Valda, you'll often have a floating surge. So like if you play like a 3-cost aura, something like a crash down, and then you pitch another blue to heave, then you have that extra heave, an extra resource then to tap. So you have 3 surges, a big attack set, and then a 6 power buff. So you're able to set up like 16 dominate pretty consistently with Valda, which I think is really interesting. This is also a card that is really good in Pleiades, but she doesn't play as many Guardian attacks. She plays some revered ones rather. But I think even at just Guard Ball 2, this is a really powerful card and should be seen play a lot of Guardians. Victor Goldbane is a deck I haven't seen a lot of, but I think he's pretty good. His hero power just says when you make gold, draw a card, which is a hard thing to beat in card games, so I love drawing cards. He has a great aggro matchup. We'll see what's good. I think he's one of the Guardians that can really just beat out Ira, especially if he's playing something like Miller's Grindstone, and he can just mill them out, especially with the, if he just has a lot of big attacks and he's able to fatigue out and mill Ira. I think he's going to be pretty good against a lot of these aggro decks. But he can be at the mercy of variants. That is something he struggles with, but I think he's a good deck, and I think people will be playing him. I think this is the Guardian that's the biggest question mark for me. I expect this hero to do well. He's hard, but he can do some insane things in this format. I've tested him a little bit. I've been able to reasonably set up these 20+ evasive damage turns with Interruption. He's a hero that uses pummel pretty well, just sitting a little Bigfoot in for 20, and then you pummel it on top of it, and your opponent just breaks down, and like, oh, what do I do? Super sick hero, really fun. You can play him a lot of different ways. He's got a great Wizard matchup too, with having a 5-inch, and just gets to play cards like Withstand for free and Oasis really well. So I think he's cool. I think he's interesting, and I expect a lot of experimentation with him. Pleiades is another one I've already started to hear rumblings of doing pretty well. I think Confidence is very good in this format. She has a good value deck. She's got good evasive damage. She's able to set up huge turns that people aren't able to deal with, especially in like in a Guardian Mirror. It can be tough. But a lot of the prevalence of block cards does make her Confidence a little bit weaker, but she has a great hat that's able to kind of generate it on demand. So when you kind of come to the right turn, you're able to go, okay, cool, now I kill you, which is really cool. I think there's a bit of a plus and a minus in her variable cost curve. I think Magmatic Plating is a card that's going to help that. I think What Happens Next is the best card in her deck, but I think it also can lead to some really awkward deck building. We'll see how that kind of turns out, but I think the best decks will use it, and I think it'll be a high skill expression. But we've already actually seen a card that I'm really interested in Pleiades from Pen that I think will have a big impact. Comeback Kicks is some new revered boots, which basically are kind of Snapdragon Scalers. As long as you get cheered on your turn, you're able to break them and get an action point. So if you say Comeback Kid and then pop your Comeback Kicks, you're able to generate, throw a Wounded Bull, get cheered, and then snap it. This is incredibly powerful with Anathos, I think, because you just go, here is 2-card 8, and then you pop your boots, then you go, here, pitch another blue. Here's a 1-card 6 on top of that, so you do a 3-card 14, which is great value. And I think she's one of the Guardians that's already good at using Anathos because of all the auras she casts. She's able to go Edge of Your Seats, I think is the card, and then Hammer Swing into a 3-card 11, so it's basically like another Zealous Belting. It's a bummer to lose the shield, but she can get some really good value out of a 2-handed hammer. Betsy, I think this is the best format we've seen Betsy in. Her hat is probably the best single piece of armor in the game in this format, I think. It's tempered 2 with a really powerful effect, being able to snap a gold to give things overpower and a big wager. Block cards are a bit of a struggle for her in this format, which is a bummer. I think some of the best decks in the format can be difficult for her, but I think with what we're seeing in Pen, I think we could see some cool cards for her. I wouldn't be surprised if she's like actually pretty playable, and especially compared to CC, I think she's in a much better spot than any other format. So if you're a big Betsy fan, I think this is a great time to pull the Marvel out and start swinging. Lastly, Bravo. Don't play this hero. This hero sucks. Play Flattering Showman. This Bravo is really bad. There's no reason to ever play this Bravo unless he rotates and they suspend him. I guess you can play this hero, but this is just kind of boring, and I think there's a lot of other better Guardians, and we have no cool Bravo spec in this format. So I'm sure you guys are curious what I've been playing. I've dug very deep. I think I've dug pretty deep in this format. I've played a couple hundred games so far, and I found a hero I really enjoy. I'm playing Vulva X. I think this hero is sick. I think I kind of spoiled it a little bit with how I talked about her, but I think she's one of the more interesting heroes. Just being 21 health is already a good start for me. She has some really interesting custom-made equipment for her. I've played about over 100 games on her with a pretty good win rate. I think she has some weaknesses, but I think being able to set up for these big dominated attacks can really catch people off guard. And I think a lot of the really powerful blues like Promising Terrain, Tectonic Instability, and Draw Crowd are also pretty powerful in her and make her an interesting hero to play. I think she's really fun. This is what I've put together. The weakest card I think in this deck is probably Aftershock, which is a bummer because it's a card I really like, but that may change with the new Magmatic chest. I found Crashdown has felt really good into a lot of these setup and fatigue guardians, things like Decimator Great Axe. If I can ever take a turn off, being able to set up a Crashdown and then like heaving out a big guardian attack and then blocking with Civic Peak on their turn and saying, here's 16 Dominate, I can make it 18 with the gloves, and if I'm ever able to find a pummel, I've set attacks for over 22 before, which is pretty cool. Yeah, she can really burst people down and surprise people. I've killed people on turn 2 with her plenty of times. She's really flexible. I think 4 costs can be a little awkward at times, but I think Chokeslam is too good of a card not to play. But Aftershock may get cut, and we may have to consider Zealous Belting or something, maybe one of the other 3-for-7s like a Fault Line or a Crush the Week. But I think I'm pretty happy with where this list is right now. Feel free to check it out. Feel free to try it. Feel free to ask me questions about it, but I think this is a really fun deck. I think she's pretty powerful, and I think not a lot of people expect her. And she's done pretty well into Bravo and some of the other Guardians, especially with some powerful hate pieces like the Old One attacks. Thank you all for watching. I've had a lot of fun making this video. I've had a lot of fun playing Silver Age. If you haven't had a chance to check the format out, I mean, LSS is doing an incredible job supporting it. They're doing at the World Premiere level, at the Calling level, at the PQ level, at Skirmish. I mean, I couldn't ask for more for what they're doing for this. I think this is a great way to get your friends into Fab. It's really, really hard to say, hey, I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this card game. It's a blast. I need you to pay $1,000 to even try it, which sucks. And I think it's really easy to say, here's 20 bucks, here's a deck, let's try it out, let's spend an afternoon playing some games. And it's a really easy, intuitive game to pick up. So I really excited for the future, and I think we're gonna have a lot of fun. Thank you all for watching if you made it this long in the video. If you guys are able to like, comment, subscribe, that really helps me, really helps the algorithm. But thank you so much, and I should have some gameplay out relatively soon. Let me know what heroes you guys want to see me play as well. Thank you, and have a good night.